Why you should take advice from the unluckiest man alive. Hey, it's Jeff again, the other Jeff Johnson. Welcome to Radical Impact TV, the video version of the Radical Impact Journal. Let me start with the most important thing I can tell you about what you're going to watch. I am not a therapist, licensed clinical professional, or otherwise. I'm not a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a life coach, a wellness expert, or any kind of motivational guru. I have no letters after my name that qualify me to tell you how to heal, how to process trauma, or how to rewire your brain. If that's what you need, and there is absolutely no shame in needing that, please go get it. Qualified mental health professionals exist for a very good reason, and they're worth every penny they're paid. What I am is a 61-year-old, physically disabled, throat cancer surviving, late diagnosed autistic, broadcaster, journalist, writer, speaker, and my personal favorite label, the unluckiest man alive. Over the past 6 decades, I've been blessed to endure things that most people will never have to face, and to survive them in ways that can only be explained by the grace of God. I've accumulated more adversity than most people experience in several lifetimes, and I've spent the last decade or so figuring out what I actually learned from all of it. This is where I share that. So who is this for? If you've been through something, one catastrophic event, or a slow accumulation of hard things, and you're not where you want to be on the other side of it, you're in the right place. Maybe you survived something that should have broken you. Maybe it did break you, at least for a little while. Maybe you're still in the middle of it. Maybe you've technically moved on, but something keeps pulling you backward and you can't quite figure out what it is or why. Now, I'm not here to tell you that what you experienced wasn't that bad. I'm not here to tell you to think positive thoughts or visualize your best life. And I'm definitely not here to try to sell you anything that promises to fix you. I'm here because I've been exactly where you are, more than once, in more ways than I can count. And I figured out some things that help me move forward. Not perfectly, not easily, but genuinely. And there's not any part of who I am that will allow me to keep potentially useful information to myself. Now, before we go any farther, I want to say a word about the word disorder. The psychologist who made my autism diagnosis changed how I think about all of this. We were discussing autism spectrum disorder, which is what it's called in the clinical literature. He offered a different framing. It's not a disorder, he said, unless it keeps you from living your life the way you want to live it. Not the way society expects you to live it, the way you want to live it. I've adopted that standard for everything I talk about here. Adversity and the trauma that often follows it becomes a problem worth addressing when it keeps you from living the life you want. Not because someone else thinks you should be over it by now. Not because you don't look like you're struggling on the outside, but because you know you are not where you want to be. And something about what you've been through is part of the why. It's about you, not them. That's who I'm making these videos and writing the Radical Impact Journal on Substack for. You, not them. Honestly, I couldn't care less what they think, and neither should you. Now, just to be crystal clear, if what you're dealing with calls for professional clinical support, that is not a weakness, a failure, or something to just push through. Admitting that you need help and getting that help is evidence of your wisdom and maturity. These videos are not a substitute for therapy. You may find them useful in addition to therapy, or after it, or when what you're carrying is heavy but doesn't quite reach the threshold of requiring professional help. Now, let's talk about the thing that changed everything for me. When I was 24 years old, I broke my back. I fell in a hole. Yes, literally just fell in a hole in the sidewalk. And I woke up in a hospital, paralyzed from the shoulders down. The doctor eventually walked in, avoiding eye contact like I was some kind of Medusa, and told me that I had fractured a vertebrae. There was a bone fragment pressing against my spinal cord, and I would never walk again. Spoiler, he was wrong, and I was wrong to believe him, but that's not actually the point. The point is how I responded to that news, or more accurately, how I reacted to it, because reacting and responding are not the same thing. And the difference between them is something I talk about a lot here. When I broke my back, I asked questions like, what am I going to do? Who's going to take care of me? When will this be over? Why me? I spent a couple of years asking those questions. They kept me focused on the past, on the problem, and on myself. They kept me angry, bitter, and stuck. And they kept me from learning a single useful thing from what I'd been through. Then, almost 30 years later, I was diagnosed with throat cancer. Initially identified as stage 4, but later revised to stage 3 because I kept asking questions and sought a second opinion, but we'll come back to that. It was a rare, aggressive, destructive cancer, and it was in my throat. After 4 decades of making my living with my voice. But this time when adversity struck, somehow I chose to ask different questions. What am I supposed to learn from this? Who will I be able to help because of this experience? How is this going to make me stronger? Why not me? Same guy, 2 similarly devastating diagnoses, completely different questions. The answers I received by asking those very different questions were not even remotely similar. I went through 2 rounds of immunotherapy, 5 rounds of chemotherapy, and 33 radiation treatments. I lost a third of my body. I didn't eat a bite of food for 8 months. I came close to dying more than once. I also made friends from 6 continents, found my purpose, and not coincidentally discovered at age 55 that I'm autistic, which explained approximately 55 years of things I'd never been able to make sense of before. Now hear me when I say this. I would not trade any of it. Not because suffering is good, it isn't, but because what came through the suffering, the clarity, the relationships, the tools, the stubborn insistence on finding out what was useful in all of it, turned out to be more valuable than anything I had ever experienced before. Those questions made the difference, and I want to share how. So what will you find here? The Radical Impact Journal and Radical Impact TV are where I share what I figured out about adversity, about trauma, about the gap between where you are and where you want to be, and about the surprisingly practical tools that can help you close that gap. Some of this will be personal narrative, my stories told as honestly as I know how to tell them. Some of it will be frameworks and systems because my autistic brain doesn't know how to stop building systems in every area of life, even in adversity, even in tragedy. Later, some of what I bring you will include conversations with other people who've been through hard things and come out with something worth sharing. Because despite what I believed for the first at least 2 or 3 decades of my life, I don't know everything or have all the answers. And some of what I share here, once I've earned the right, will be about faith, specifically about what mine has meant to me in the middle of all of this. I won't ambush you with it, but I won't hide it either. You deserve to know who you're hearing from. Throughout all of it, there will be humor, or at least stuff I think is humorous. Not because hard things are funny, they're not, but because laughter has become one of my most reliable tools for staying sane, staying connected, and staying human. If you're not expecting my vain attempts at comedy, they're going to hit you like a hyperactive dad joke on nuclear-powered steroids every time, therefore consider yourself warned. One final thing. You may be wondering why on earth you should take any of this seriously when it's coming from him. He broke his back by falling into a sidewalk, took 55 years to figure out that he's autistic, and may very well be the only person alive to ever earn frequent flyer miles from the emergency room. Fair question. My answer is because the lessons I've learned and the tools I've developed work, whether the person teaching them is graceful or not. The unluckiest man alive learned how to move forward in spite of himself. And that's actually the best possible credential for what I'm trying to do here. Because the change isn't what creates the radical impact. How you respond to it does. So welcome to Radical Impact TV and the Radical Impact Journal. I wish no one needed anything I came here to share. But if any of it can help, even a little, I'm glad you're here. If this resonated with you, please consider subscribing. New videos go up most Sundays. You can also find me on Substack at the Radical Impact Journal. And if you want to connect directly, I'm at radicalimpact.com.